Hello, everyone. Welcome to What's New in Revit 2020. My name is Janine Lulay. I'm the Marketing Specialist at TopCon Solutions, and I will be the moderator for today's presentation. For housekeeping purposes, a recording of today's webinar will be sent to you via email. If you have questions, you may use the questions area within the user interface on the right-hand side of your screen to type in questions which will be addressed by the presenters at the end. If you experience any technical difficulties, such as a loss in audio, most of these issues can be resolved by logging out of the session and then logging back in. If you are still having trouble, please type us a note in the questions area. And moving forward, today's webinar will be presented by David Campbell and Curt Egli. David is a technical specialist who works with many clients to execute Autodesk Revit. He is a certified professional in structure, architecture, and MEP mechanical. David teaches Revit Structure Essentials and BIM 360 workflow through design and docs. He is currently learning Dynamo and Edgewise, so please be on the lookout for these courses as well. And finally, David has a degree in architectural design. And now for Curt. Curt's former experience includes 17 years at Autodesk as technical account manager, working with customers in the AEC and utilities industries. He has also been working he also worked as worldwide BIM lead at Critigen, LLC, and CAD production manager at an AE firm. Curt has 3 degrees in architecture, all coming from the University of Idaho. I would like to now turn the presentation over to our presenters, David and Curt.
Thank you very much, Janine. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. There we go, should do it. Okay, so my pleasure to go ahead and kick this off. I'm Curt, and we're going to pass it back and forth between David and I. I'll do some, then David will do some, then we'll come back to me. I'll keep you guys on your toes there. Here's the kind of things that we're going to walk our way through. You can see there's quite a few that we've decided to highlight here. Autodesk, as they have in the past, has been, their thought process anyway, has been around connect, create, and optimize. And so they're putting different levels of energy into each of those and helping you create, but also optimize the product and the workflow as well. Now, there's lots of them, right? We're not going to be able to demonstrate all of them, but David and I went through and picked out some that we thought would be particularly interesting to you. And hopefully you'll find that there's something in there for each of your disciplines that are online there. So I'm going to start with under Connect with PDF into Revit. We now have the ability to take PDFs in, and then if you have vector geometry, we can snap directly to the vector geometry. So I'm going to have to show that one surely. Here it is under the Insert tab. You can see there's a new PDF button in there, and I'm going to go find myself a PDF. And this can be a single page or multi-page. I chose a multi-page PDF. And so you can see here, I got 5 pages in this one. Or if I'd rather, I can see them by thumbnails, which I'm flipping through right now, and take a look at it. And then once you decide you want one, you just hit OK. I'm going to take thumbnail number 1, but you can see also that I can adjust the resolution here. As it comes in, I'm going to go ahead and pump myself up to 600 dpi and say OK. You'll see that after the donut spins for a moment that it's very much like the images that you put in the past, JPEGs, TIFFs, things like that. It gets handled in that sort of way. Up here at the top, we got send to back, send to front, things like that as a part of this too. You can pin it and the like. Now I'm going to go ahead and enable snaps here, and then consequently I can take a distance on this. So I'm going to take a measurement from there to there, and I take a look at this and go, oh, I'm that far off on this. It's not to the right scale, so I'd like to use it for the scale there. So I'll do a little quick math here. So it is that to get it to scale. How's that for math? That's pretty fast, huh? Okay, so I kind of figured it out in advance, so we didn't have to do that together. But there it is to scale, or at least I hope so. Let me try the measurement once again here. After I've done that one, I'll go from here to there and 24 feet. Well, what do you know? I was right, David. Anyway, so once you're working with that, we can crop the view, for example. Go ahead and hit crop view. Bring that in. If you wanted to use it as an underlay, then we can start to work right on top of it, and or have hybrid if you wanted to plot it out in that fashion, and start to work with a little bit of Revit and a little bit of the PDF here. Additionally, because we have snaps on, I can say that I'd like to use pick lines or just start to trace over the top of it as well. So let me do finish face interior here and just do like that. And, here, let's do this one. Just give you kind of a sense for this. So here I am, I'm starting to convert it into Revit entities as well, right on top of it. So anyway, that's PDF that we're working with. You can also do manage image with this as well, where we come back to images, and you can add in additional ones from other PDFs. And then here, I'll show you how to do that real quick. So like say I want the third floor here, and say okay. The donut spins for a moment. I get multiple ones, and then the way you use it, if you decide to use manage images, you hit place instance, and then go ahead and place another instance there, like that. Okay, that's the PDFs. Pretty nice tool. You'll find that will help your workflow. For publishing cloud models on Revit Home, some of this I started to highlight which ones were showing up in 2019.2, for example. We're going to have to keep our eyes on that with releases as we roll forward, because in the old days when there was just a release once a year, which kind of feels like that right now with a release once a year, if they didn't get the feature totally built the day that it got released, it had to wait for a year till it could come in, some new rendering thing or something like that. Now, with everybody under subscription, when a dot release comes out, it's not just about bug fixes, not that anything ever goes wrong, right? Okay, with anything, but it's also about new features. They can just roll it in whenever they feel like it's really built to the best of their abilities there. So this one showed up in 2019.2. We're down in this area here. You could go ahead and publish your model into cloud models. The other thing I wanted to share with you around this too is the update that they put in cloud models for Revit. It's about work shared, of course, multiple people working on the same file at the same time up in the cloud, with a Revit project up there, and other individual contributors, MEP, architecture, structure, whatever your discipline is, the other firms coming in and placing theirs up there as well. Now it's also around non-work shared models as well. So they're giving access to people that don't need to collaborate in that kind of fashion to where you can put a standalone up into the cloud. Now, what good would that be? Well, from my point of view, say in Portland, you have somebody working on it for the morning on a project that, some school that you're making. And then in the afternoon, your Seattle counterpart, another colleague, joins in and works on the model there. And from a BIM management standpoint, if you have other, say you're a plumbing engineering firm and you have mechanical, electrical structure that normally would post files for you to link into your project, there's a BIM management role that each of us have to do. They'd be able to update their own files right there in the cloud if you give them access to it. So another one that we have is some improvements to SketchUp. They've improved the material transition, and the import and link function has been improved. They just keep moving that forward. Probably one of the most notable things about this release is the support for SketchUp 2018 files. So now we have that in Revit as well. So that will give you more options. Another thing around Revit extension for fabrication exports, this allows you to generate data in a commonly used CSV format. So that's a different file format, which then can be used in spreadsheets and other data environments that support fabrication and procurement. Okay. Under the category, I guess, of create, one of them I wanted to highlight was elliptical walls. Now, the slide kind of speaks for itself. We can draw elliptical walls now. This is a new tool up here that we didn't have before. You know, a couple of things I'd point out for a while there. I thought I'd go ahead and demo it, but it's like, hey, it's an elliptical wall. But really, you know, the things that you might wonder around that is that curtain walls, same thing. You can draw elliptical there, as well as standard walls with that, the basic walls. Doors and windows that are placed in elliptical walls operate just the same as they do in other walls. So the behaviors around the way that they're placed and that you work with them in a straight wall, if you will, for in terms of hosting and openings and things like that work the same, and joins as well. So when you use the trim extend to corner, you'll get the results you were hoping for. So there's that. Electrical home run wiring improvements, you know, so actually, you know, let me just increase the size of that screen capture here. And as I'm talking this through a little bit, if you could just look at the tabs at the top of the view name of the tab will help you understand what the difference is between the 6 different views I have up there. The home run arrow is style is user definable, enabling you to tailor your arrows to suit your graphical preference. There's a multi-circuit home run arrow control, which enables more control over what conditions and how home run arrows are shown for multi-circuit wiring. And an additional option for wiring tick marks, enabling control on multi-circuit home runs. So that's quite an improvement there. Next, I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate this one because I thought, I know it's just an electrical thing, but let's do a short demonstration on this so you can get a feel for what they've done in the electrical realm. A lot of times I know our electrical customers feel like they are being left out. Well, let's just take a look at this one. So I'm going to go demonstrate this. So I'll drop out of this one, save your changes, no, and I'm back here. Okay, so I tried to make a simple enough example here for us. I've got 2 different appliance, you know, main circuit breakers there, and I made a couple of circuits off of them. So you can see here the 2 different panel schedules here. And you can see also if you just take a look down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then, you know, over here is 2, 3, 4, 6. So anyway, there's 6 of them on LP1 and LP2. Okay, so with regard to the idea of this is that the electrical panel feed through lugs connection feature, which is what we're looking at right now, it's an alternative to feeding a sub panel via breaker in the main panel. So in order to work with that, you know, this is the same as it's always been. You know, I create a power circuit off of that, and then I select a panel, you know, and then now here it is. I'm making it LP1 a sub panel of LP2. Okay, easy enough. That's how we've always done it. But you know, now if we go back and take a look at the panel schedules, that looks the same. But LP2, now that LP1 is a sub panel of it, is taking up 7, 8, 7, 9, 11. It's taking up 3 circuits off of this. But now if we want to be able to feed that through lugs, here's how we do that. First, we say this is the sub over here. So I tell this one that I would like to be able to feed through lugs. So I toggle that on. Okay. Then this one over here, if I take a look at that, I say instead of through a breaker, feed through lugs. Okay. Now with that, you're seeing this now, right? You see how before it said LP2 and it was taken up with LP1 down here. So again, now it's feeding through lugs. Now, Now there's one last thing we need to do. They're both going circuits 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. here. So I need to come back here and do one more option, and that is off of here. You'll find a new toggle clear down here at the bottom. If I can scroll down, the circuit numbering option. Let me drag that over here a little bit so you can see. And I want to continue numbering. So I tell it to do that. And now if I go take a look at this one, LP2 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here we got 13, 15, 17, and so on and so forth. So with these options, though, I might also add that you'll find that the subpanels loads have been totaled onto the main panel. And we can now model the connection of panels through feed-through lugs and more accurately document the system design. So there we have that. And for all of you that are not in the electrical discipline, you're all electrical engineers now just by watching that. Okay. All right, maybe it doesn't quite work that way. Okay. Anyway, another thing is zoom and schedules. You know, I went ahead and put this one in out of a 2019.2 because it slipped by me. I didn't realize that this was a possibility here. So let me go ahead and close out of this one once, and I'll open up another one. And let's go to, let's bring up this one here. This one has a few schedules attached to it. Quantity schedules is what I was going to look at with this one. So I'll, after the donut finishes spinning, I'll go ahead and open up a couple of these schedules, like this one here. If I can double click fast enough, there we go. Okay, so like some of the data in here, you know, it gets to be pretty congested, right? Small fonts, you find yourself looking for your glasses, or you can't zoom in like you can in a plan, or can you? You know, actually you can now. The way that I'm doing this, it's not rolling the wheel of the mouse. I'm actually using the control key. I'm holding down the control key and tapping on the plus or minus on the keyboard. So like, for example, say you have this one just so you can see the behavior here. Say I open up a different schedule and I go over here and I want to see a little closer. This is the space analysis schedule. Zoom in closer. And then I come back here and it remembers the zoom level that you set it to for the session that you're in at the time. Anyway, you open it up again and it'll reset itself back to that. So I have one more that I wanted to show you as well before I hand it over to David here. And that is modifying the top and bottom elevation. So we've been able to do this as of 2019.2 for conduit, cable tray, and duct, and now with 2020 they've added in pipe into this as well. So let's just think about that for a little bit once. If I can go back to the 3D view here and just orbit around here a little bit, getting closer. If you weren't familiar with this in the past, I select on a duct, and it's right over here in this area where we got top, middle, and bottom elevation. It reported all three of those back in prior releases, but you could only adjust in the property palette the middle elevation. So that meant if there were trusses, beams above, and you wanted to skim just below the bottom of the beams or the trusses, you had to do a little bit of math in order to get yourself up there to get the top, because you had to move the middle to get the top to move up. Makes sense? So now, for example, I can just get right into that field and edit it and slide it up, and then of course the other numbers adjust. Now, the other thing I pointed out was with pipe. That's a new one in 2020. So if I go to the top elevation on that one, you can see that it is also able to adjust in that fashion. So we can get very accurate. It's just, it really makes life a little easier. And that's the goal of Revit 2020, to make life a little easier. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to David then. Janine, if you could do that for us.
All right, thank you very much. So let me go ahead and make sure. Yep, okay. So thank you. My name is David Campbell. I'm your structural specialist, and I'll take over for starting with the improved rebar copy and move logic. So with this, your shape-driven rebars now snap more intuitively to the concrete cover when you copy or move them. Now, typically by not snapping automatically, very small segment length adjustments are eliminated and the rebar geometry remains consistent. Because of this, no new rebar positions are created. Okay, your shape-driven rebar segments are now automatically constrained only to the concrete host faces that are in range of each segment. This change in behavior is going to ensure that bars will no longer incorrectly connect to faces that are far away and react to the changes of those faces. Now you can still manually select any face as a constraint target parallel to the bar segment, even if that face is not within the range. Now, I do want to go ahead and note, when you do manually select a constraint target, that constraint is set as preferred. If the constrained bar segment is parallel to that face, it'll keep that constraint when moving the bar on the same host, even if that face is outside of the range of the bar. When you're copying the rebar from one host to a similar one, it's going to automatically match the selected constraints from the target to the destination hosts. It's going to, the structural hosts are going to be similar if their corresponding faces are parallel and oriented to the same way. Now, having these enhancements is going to give us a predictable or a more predictable behavior when we're copying or moving that shape-driven rebar, right? All right. Now, up next, we have the multi-rebar annotation to concrete faces. So with the multi-rebar annotation, we can now use these to dimension the position of your rebar sets with respect to the concrete host faces. So I'm actually going to go ahead and jump into Revit here, and what we'll see is, let me make sure it's okay. What we'll see, let me jump into my entry level plan and I will jump into one of my sections here. Okay. Basically, with a multi-rebar annotation tag, it's going to give you something like this, right? It's going to give us the overall length, as well as go ahead and detail how many bar we're looking at what size, and the spacing. So that's cool. But with the new multi-rebar annotation, and what we can do is also go ahead and hit cancel there. While it's spinning here, I'm going to have to move over and grab my face. But basically what you're going to notice is with this multi-rebar annotation, it's going to start giving us something that looks like that, right? It's going to ask me to move my dimension strings and place them. I'm going to scroll over a little bit here, zoom in. But what you can see is if I need that spacing, essentially in between like the face of my floor there, and how far of a gap or distance do I need in between that concrete face and my first bar, you're going to see it's going to give that to me right there. Okay, so we can kind of take that past, go ahead and position this over here and drop it. Cool. All right, so that's a very nice tool. Now, I will say to use the multi-rebar annotations, there must be at least 2 rebar references or 1 rebar and 1 regular reference in your selection. Okay. Your multi-rebar annotation for freeform rebar can now be used to dimension your freeform rebar sets with planar and parallel bars in any view that is perpendicular to all the bar planes of the bars in the set. Your multi-rebar annotations can also be used for dimensioning your rebar sets in your structural elements that are inclined with respect to the view. Now, the rebar sets can be either freeform or shape-driven and must be made up of single segment parallel bars with or without hooks. Now this one I really do like, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and kind of talk about this for a second, and I'll demo this in Revit as well. With the rebar model in place for our stairs, any type of reinforcement, including your shape-driven or your freeform rebar, can be hosted in your structural elements of the stairs, okay? Now, so I'll get in here, get into my entry level, and there we go. So I have, basically here I have some concrete stairs, some cast in place, okay? Let me zoom out of this and get into, come on. Get out, there we go, yeah. Okay, so what we'll see is I've placed a couple bars in here already. Let me go ahead and grab that out. But when I click on my concrete stairs, you'll see here's my reinforcement. So I can click on that and choose whatever I need to. Maybe I wanna go with number 4 bar, and I want to run this parallel to my or perpendicular to my cover, okay? And it's going to allow me to move up and down here and place this as such, okay? You can use, like I said, any of your freeform or your shape-driven rebar here. Now, this is going to be unique to the project using model in place rebar to deliver this fully detailed model of our stairs, okay? So let me get back in here. Now, this one is awesome. So the steel connections propagation. All right, let me get into Revit for this one. Your propagation is a pretty awesome feature with them integrating Dynamo into Revit. Okay, so I'm going to get into, let me get into my first floor here. Okay. Do a zoom extents. There we go. Find my connection here. All right, so here's my connection. I have a basic clip angle going from my beam here and going into my other beam. So what I wanted to talk about here, though, is how easy it is when you're working on like a large project and the same connection needs to be inserted into multiple kind of locations or instances, right? What I can do now is right click and then you'll find propagate connection. What this is going to do is recognize any like conditions. So beam to beam, just like this here, and you'll see they're going to change to blue. And it's going to take a second, but it's going to go ahead and place that connection right there. Okay, so we see the connection. Again, it'll take a couple seconds of Revit working in the background to go ahead and bring those connections to where they are visible, like this one here. But you'll see that took just a couple seconds and it's already pretty much went through and connected all of my different beams together. Now, I do want to note that this is view specific. So it will do all of the beams or columns, what have you, in the specific view. If you do it in 3D, that works as well, but it does take a while. It's going to spin for a little while there, okay? Let me move back into my PowerPoint here. Now, I do want to say this next part with the connections or grouping of your connections. Basically, your UI has been migrated to type parameters, making it easier to use and more powerful to configure. So before in Revit, when you clicked on a connection like this here, you'd see these modify parameters, right? And we could go in, and this was new to like 18 and 19. But with 2020, basically what they've done is given us this edit type parameter. So because of this, what I can do is then duplicate that family and create like another connection here, a customized connection. So where I'm going to go next, you'll see modify parameters. It's here in the type properties of the actual connection. So, all right, it's processing those there for me still. So I'm going to let it do that real quick. It's going to spin there for a second, and there they are. Sweet. Okay. So we'll go edit type. Now I can come in, modify parameters. Okay, so what we're going to see here is that you can customize this for each connection family based on their parameters and save it under that specific name, right? What's really cool about this is here you can adjust your clip angle, the clip weld, based on like what plates you want to use. You can specify your welds, specify your copes or the bolts. If you want to go ahead and specify how many you're using, what size they are, the distance away from the edge of the plate, pretty much anything like that, and save it as a customized connection. And basically, you can just save this and then use it throughout your different projects, okay? Oh, and actually, I did want to talk on that one real quick. Let me get back here. So you now have a full 3D preview of your connection as well. So as you're going through modifying these parameters, you can see what's going on with this connection, just like with our walls, things like that, as we're kind of editing them. We can get in and see based on whichever type of view you want to look at this from. All right. So that's a very cool feature. So we do have essentially some new features for tagging and dimensioning your steel elements as well. They did bring in the the radial and diameter dimensions of your circular openings that are located along a steel member. You can insert a dimension between your holes or your shear studs by picking your centers. And you have multiple tags for your weld symbols that can be inserted in any view, regardless of the visual style that's set for that view. So I will go in here real quick. I know Curt doesn't like that one. Sorry, Curt. So I'll come in here and we'll see, here's my connection, right? So we had before, now I need to take this and make sure I give this note to you guys. When you're going to do these dimensions for structural elements, you want to go ahead and be in wireframe view. That's going to allow you to utilize your aligned dimensions here, and to grab, if you want to grab the center of center, anything like that of your bolts, go ahead and place that. If you want the spacing between your bolts, it's going to snap to those bolts for us. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and show this one as well. Element hide. And I'll jump in here. So if I grab my diameter, you're going to see it will react to my bolt holes and will give me my diameter for these holes. So I can go ahead and shoot that out and send it up to whoever needs it. All right. Optimize. So optimize is going to mean several things in the context of Revit, but basically it's how they can, or how you can improve your ease of working by making this software work better and improving your interactions with it, okay? And first, kind of under that, is going to be your material appearance improvements. So basically, they've come up with some new appearance assets which use physically based definitions. These appearance assets enrich your material library and will greatly enhance your visualization experience. The new appearance assets are pretty much optimized for the Autodesk rendering engine, and they provide high quality and realistic visual presentation in your rendered images. Also, the ray trace views are when you change it to realistic. You can find a lot of these different appearance assets by going through or exploring the appearance asset browser. Also on that one though, we do have 3 new improvements for the material interface. You can now filter materials by class with a new icon that's been added in the material browser. You can also access the material libraries with the new material libraries bar that they did populate at the bottom of the browser. Okay, so right down there. And you can also select a larger thumbnail view for materials. So with a size of like 256 by 256, it's going to be easier to view. I like that because, of course, scrolling down through here, it's hard to tell what is what. Okay, so we're going to be able to see kind of what we're scrolling through there and make sure you pick the specific material you're looking for. So going back to what Curt was talking about earlier with being able to bring in these PDFs, we do have some improvements with that as well. There are a handful of your manage images improvements for images and PDFs. You'll notice that if you hover over insert PDF or insert image within Revit, that they do give you a tooltip now. So that's kind of nice, lets you know what you can do. But also the BIM 360 and your desktop connector paths have been enabled, and they have an option for relative paths as well for your PDFs. There you see the path type. We can change that from absolute to relative. But also they can report your path type, including the absolute, cloud, and in project, okay? So there are also basically the improvements to your scale and size functionality. As you guys saw Curt earlier, he kind of just typed in. You have that direct modification of your scale parameter, the width and the height for images and PDFs, okay? So track and edit your scope box parameter in your view list. With this feature, the scope box parameter can now be included in your view list, and it's possible to change the scope box by selecting it in the schedule rather than in your view. And this is going to allow you to coordinate crop regions across multiple views without having to open each individual view. So that's definitely a nice feature there. All right, copy and paste legends across sheets. I will be demoing this one. I do feel like this is a pretty big feature. So we can copy and take legends across from one view or sheet to another. So if I come down here and get into, let's say, my ground floor plan, okay, and I have a column legend here. Okay, so what I can do is grab that column legend, and all I need to do is copy to clipboard. And I'll go paste, align to selected views. It's nice that it filters down the like the sheets that I have, so it's not giving me the views, it's just giving me my sheets. And I'm going to say okay, and when I switch over to my first floor here, there it is, and it's going to populate in the exact same place. So that's really nice as well. If you do want it in a specific area on your sheet, when you do paste those across, they do populate in that exact area. All right. Now, creating parts from your imported geometry. So we can create parts from direct shape geometry or InfraWorks, and you can use this to create or split your parts up, okay? And then with the InfraWorks to Revit bridge workflow, you can use defining lines or other parts tools for construction or detailing if needed. And the info center. So what you'll notice in the kind of top right corner here, the info center, you'll notice that this has been reduced really just to create more space in the view title. And they remove functionality which is really no longer supported or used. The WS Com Center, that's been removed. And they've collapsed the search bar. However, that search bar, if you just click up here, you can bring it out and then go ahead and search up there if you need to. Okay, so we can collapse that or break it down or bring it back out. Okay. Dynamo 2.1. So this is very exciting. Dynamo for Revit is a computational design extension, and it's now considered a feature of Revit. So Dynamo is no longer going to be a separate application. The icon in the upper left-hand corner of your Dynamo user interface now displays a small Revit icon to reflect this update. So you will not be able to update or use a different version of Dynamo with Revit 2020. This will greatly simplify your installation process and your versioning for any Dynamo users out there. And this is a unified experience. You will have Dynamo 2.1 installed at your launch, and it is going to be tied to Revit. Okay, so when you're installing updates for Revit, that's going to be updating your Dynamo as well. Okay. The steel connections for Dynamo. So as I'm speaking on Dynamo here, and I'm a structural guy, this is very fantastic. Basically what we'll see is they've included some steel connection scripts that we can run through Dynamo with a steel connections package in Revit. So if I go to manage and I go to my Dynamo player, well, I'll show you guys kind of where to find this as well, because this was going to be my other talking point here. A new Dynamo package called Autodesk Steel Connections is now available. Let me grab this and move this over here. And if I just come into new, under packages, what you can do is hit search for package, and then you're going to see the Autodesk Steel Connections, okay? Or even just type in search for Steel Connections, and you'll be able to find that and then load it in or install it into your Dynamo, right? Now, I will tell you for Dynamo Player, if you wanted to find these scripts here for structure, basically you're going to notice that it is included, the package is in the, these scripts are in the package for the Autodesk Steel Connections. If you guys do have any questions on that, you can email me. It is also on the Autodesk forum on how to find the location of these. But basically, I can just run all of these through, and it automatically recognizes the elements that I'm going to go ahead and reference, okay? So, let me get back here. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and take a note here. Autodesk has been putting a really big kind of push on structure and detailing our steel models. So with this, Revit 2020 is going to use background processes to carry out performance-intensive tasks when you're editing these steel connections in your 3D model, so you can continue to work while it's processing. So you guys noticed when I propagated those connections, everything kind of turned blue. And you saw the symbol for the connections there. But basically, if I was working in 2019, that blue circle, a little toilet flush of death there, would have just kept going and going and going, and I wouldn't really have been able to do anything until it was done with its process. But now with 2020, as you saw, I could still maneuver around, I could still work as I needed to while it was processing there in the background. So that's really nice, okay? Also, basically while it's working, if you look down in your commands or your notification bar, Revit's going to tell you what it's doing. It's going to let you know that it's still in process or running that command. And the additional parameters for steel components. So I kind of showed you guys these earlier, But basically, you'll see that your new parameters for components of steel gives you more control over the information contained in your engineering documentation. You will notice plate tags, bolt tags. There's just a lot of different features in there for us. And you do have that capability to schedule your structural connections as well and see your advanced information like your plate dimensions and things like that. You will get a better understanding of your steel components with more accurate schedules that are automatically generated from this model. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Curt.
Okay, as Janine shares presenter with me, I believe I'm on. Okay, so thanks, David. I have a few more that I wanted to do for you here. Path of travel with regard to optimization. This is an automated path between 2 points that understands obstacles. So let's go ahead and give this a try once. I'm back over in the Revit interface once, and I am using a healthcare example for this one. I laid in a few paths already here to recovery and patient rooms from the nurses station, so you can see how this works. Under the Analyze tab now, there's a new button for path of travel, and a new line style you'll find in the templates for path of travel lines. And you pick a point where you'd like to start and where you'd like to go to, and it sees the counter there around the nurses station as an obstacle, and when the donut's finished spinning, it has gone around it to the outside. So let's do a couple more of those. Like, say I want to go from here to here. It would figure out how to get out of the nurses station and find the door and come back through. I'll do another one from over here to here, for example, so you can kind of get a sense for this. Now, you can see over at the left, if you look as it's working, that it's giving information about it. If I pick back on it again here, the speed that they're calculating this for the time that it takes, and maybe most importantly, the length that it is of where it's going to. You can see where they're going with this, though. Right now, in this release, anyway, 2020.0, from room to room is not available, but I bet you at some point we're going to see that pop up. And then some of these others too, like adjusting speed and stuff like that, probably is something that they will give us as well, but it's feeding back like that. So additionally, how did it know to go right through the door? Because there was a door there. Actually, if you look once again at the base of the root analysis right here, it can bring up a dialog that it never considers hidden objects, demolished objects, but you can add in things that model categories that should not be obstacles even when they're visible, like doors. Otherwise, it would be like, I can't get there from here. Okay, but you could add in other things as well if you so desire. I might point out at the bottom here also, there's an analysis zone in plan where you can pick the top and the bottom of where it should be considering. So if there's a light fixture at 10 feet up and it's not an obstacle, obviously, if you're walking around, unless you're super tall. Anyway, you can choose what you would like to be the obstacle range for that as well. So that's coming from there. So this sort of thing can also be scheduled as well. So I brought up, maybe you don't care about times, for example, but lengths and maybe the total is an important one. If I go back to plan again, I'm showing this in a healthcare kind of a nurses getting to patients kind of a thing. But this also could be used for egress as well, where you're trying to find out different distances there and just calculate that for your path of travel, basically for that. We can also tag this as well. So I'm going to go ahead and tag these, tag that one and that one like that, right? And this tag actually is not one that I built. It just comes out of the box. They've included it now that has the length as well as the time that it takes to get there too. I might say, with the way that we work, design is changing over time. And if there are obstacles that show up, like you redesign the plan, I'm just going to plop a table out here, for example. I'm going to put it right there. It's in my way, right? You can pick at any time and say, I'd like to do another look at it and update, and it will spin for a moment and come up with that as an obstacle and adjust the length. You saw that it jumped up to 56 feet, 2 inches, and went around those objects. So if you're making some changes to your plan, we can have this update as well. So with that, let me go on to another one. Now, in Revit 2019, you noticed that they created complex rules for view filtering using or and operators, right? So in 2020 here, they have added and built on additional functionality with the or filter. Okay, so for example, I thought I'd show you this one too if I could. Go ahead and close out of that one. And I'll go back to, let's go back to that Audubon building and open that one up once. So say that, you're the electrical designer and you're trying to figure out what kind of work you need to do next with this plan. Now, lights need to be circuited. Some of these things, like a drinking fountain, for example, might have an electrical connection on it, the air handling unit electrical connection. I'll show you, I did make a new parameter on this one called electrical connection. It's a yes or no parameter. So you can see that that one actually needs some work from me at some point. So what I'd like to do is, as my goal, is to light up in red anything that I either need the circuit or has an electrical connector on it that I should take a look at. Some of these things might not, but something else might have a motion activated or something like that off of it that needs my attention. So with that, I'm going to create a view filter on this, and I'll create this one from scratch for you. I'll make a new one called circuit check. There we go, new one called circuit check, and I'm going to have it work off of lighting fixtures and plumbing fixtures. So here's been the kicker in the past with this is I have two categories that are significantly different from each other. Now, if I were to look at the parameters that I can bring up, it's only ones that are common to both of those two categories. So model and manufacturer, for example, the cost, description, things like that that are on both of them. Now with the enhanced or rules, I can select a category like lighting fixtures and get at all of the parameters that go with lighting fixtures, regardless of whether the plumbing fixture has that parameter on it, which is a beautiful thing, right? So, I'm going to do circuit number, does not contain, and all my circuits have a hyphen in them here. So if it doesn't contain it, it should light it up or whatever we're going to do with it. Now I'm going to add another rule. In this case, I'm looking at plumbing fixtures, and if you look here at the drop down, I get like cold fixture units, cold water fixture units, that sort of thing, which are common only to the plumbing, right? So for example, here's the electrical connection, and if it does contain, here let's do an equals, and then I don't have to type anything, contains yes, equals yes, then that becomes the rule. Okay, so now I've got two ORs together, and then if you're familiar with view filters, it's a two-step process. First you make it and then you apply it to the view. So I'm going to say I'd like it to become red if indeed it meets that criteria. And then I say okay to that. The donut spins for a moment, and my things that have electrical connector on them light up in red. It looks like I got 4 light fixtures over here that need my attention as well. So that's the new OR filter on that. Could be quite helpful there. This one I wanted to show you as well. This is about filters for elevation. They have now elevation from level is something that's kind of been a rename, if nothing else, to make it a little more clear for us for this. So without creating this one from scratch though, here let me come back and get out of, I have one where I created it already, the filter, and I'll just show you how how I went about it. So let's go over to one that doesn't have it already. There we go. And the donut spins. And I'm going to look at air terminals in this one, for example. I'll go over here to the first floor HVAC plan. And, you know, if you pick on these different air terminals here, you can see this one's at 9 feet. This one's at 11 feet, so on and so forth. And of course, I can schedule these and such, which could be a powerful tool as well. But I'm going to go ahead and tag these ones so we can see at a glance. You know, here's 9 feet. This one's at 10'6". This one's at 11 foot. You know, this one here is at 11, so on and so forth with that. So now we're using that at elevation from level for the new one for this. And I can do the same thing with filters as well, the view filters like we saw a little bit earlier. I'll just show you what I created. Here's an air terminal elevation, one that I created that uses a rule very similar, but is going for the new elevation from level parameter off of that. And so it'll do it if it's 10'6" or greater. And so I say, go ahead and apply that. Let's make these red as well. I'm going with red today. Say okay, say okay, say okay. And anything that is 10'6" or greater is going to highlight. You can see that one in red and that one not, right? Now, maybe what would have been a more powerful demonstration of this would have been to use it in a schedule, because light switches, you know, there's you know, we want it 4 foot from the floor. The duplex receptacle, I want 18 inches from the floor, that sort of thing. But you got to watch that. I just wanted to caution you with that a little bit, because you got to watch that, because what we'll do commonly in family editing is to make the insertion point 4 foot below the switch. So you're looking at the schedule going, oh, hey, it's at 0. So you move it to 4 feet and now it's at 8 feet, right? So you got to know your families, right? Got to know your families. Okay, one last one here before I hand this over to Janine again. This is another one for fabrication. That change service feature has been enhanced for fabrication ductwork, and it allows selections of service to be swapped while giving you, the user, the ability to retain its original shape. And for even greater control and more predictable results, the users can also modify the shapes and their sizes with this new select group option that you'll see now in Revit 2020. So what we're seeing now with Revit 2020 with regard to this change service is allowing multi-shape services to be preserved and replaced in a single operation. So now this has been kind of a whirlwind tour that we were going through at high speed, sort of-ish, David, right? And you've seen at a glance some of the new features. Here's the newest that are in Revit. And with that, I'll hand the mic over to Janine to talk David and me through some of the questions that came up during our presentation.
Thank you, gentlemen. I just want to share with you that while I have you both in the same room, that was a fantastic presentation. You guys are stellar. It was very smooth. So kudos to you. Everyone, we are now open for any questions that you may have for David and Curt. Please go ahead and type those questions in the questions box, and I will, of course, ask those questions on your behalf. I know we have a couple of minutes before the hour is up, but go ahead and feel free to type in those questions. For those who can stay a little longer with us, for those who have to hop off the session, we completely understand, but rest assured, if there are any questions, we will make sure to provide answers to those questions via a follow-up email today. So for those of you who can stay on a little longer, go ahead and type in those questions. Wow, you guys must have done a stellar job and answered everybody's questions very thoroughly. Okay, that does it for today, everyone. We want to thank you for attending. There are no questions, but But if you do find that you have questions after today's presentation, please feel free to contact us directly. You can send us an email to sales@topconsolutions.com, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you, everyone.